There are moments in an NBA player's career when uncertainty about the future becomes as thick as the smoke inside a packed arena. At 22 years old, Jonathan Kuminga is standing right at that crossroads. A young, explosive forward who has already flashed signs of a rising star. He now finds himself stuck in a stalemate, one that reflects both the financial constraints of the league and the strategic priorities of a franchise undergoing a quiet rebuild, the Golden State Warriors. And it's not just the Dubs facing this dilemma. In an offseason marked by increasingly strict salary caps, new collective bargaining rules, and a lukewarm market for restricted free agents, even ambitious teams like the Phoenix Suns have to take a deep breath before making any kind of move. According to reporter Jake Fisher from the Stein Line, the Suns are the latest team to express exploratory interest in a trade for Kuminga. But that interest comes with an asterisk. On paper, the team of Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal doesn't have the assets Golden State would likely want in a deal, with no valuable draft picks and few ascending young players. Phoenix is more curiosity than a real possibility. This is a portrait of a post-new CBA NBA. Teams limited by aprons with no room for financial mistakes. Looking at players like Kuminga with desire, but also with fear. Historically, a player in Kuminga's position, still young, with potential to grow in glimpses of brilliance in the playoffs, would receive aggressive offers from other franchises, forcing his current team to decide whether or not to match. But that has changed. Now, most teams don't want to risk making an offer that will just be matched, nor do they want to commit cap space to contracts that aren't considered surefire hits. The result? Kuminga's market is dominated by exploratory talks, offers that never make it to the table, and frustrating speculation. The only other team reportedly showing real interest is the Sacramento Kings. Even so, the Warriors are set to decline an offer, details unknown, from the California rival. The fact that not even a division rival with competitive urgency and solid assets could sway the Dubs front office shows that the organization still believes in Kuminga's value, but only within certain limits. And those limits are being defined by the league's new financial structure. Golden State is dangerously close to the first apron, roughly $25 million away, even with only 9 players under contract. That means if they go over the limit, they'll be prohibited from signing players via sign-and trade, using salary exceptions, or even adding depth during season. In this context, paying Kuminga the contract he reportedly believes he deserves, at least $25 million per year, according to sources close to the player, has become a structural problem. The dilemma isn't just about technical value or tactical fit. It's about maneuverability in an increasingly cramped financial chessboard. That explains why the Warriors, at least behind the scenes, have prioritized other names. Al Horford, age 39, and Anthony Melton, who's recovering from a serious knee injury. Veteran players, cheaper, with specific utility, but easier to fit under the salary cap. The problem? By doing this, Golden State sends an uninspiring message to Kuminga. You're good, but not essential. Still, there may be a strategic subtlety at play. By not immediately re-signing Kuminga or rushing to trade him, the Warriors may be buying time. Starting in December, new rules will allow for larger value trades once some of this offseason's contracts become movable. The front office seems to be hoping for a friendly deal with Kuminga now. Perhaps a shorter contract with incentives that keeps him on the roster and opens more flexibility for future moves. But that strategy is risky. There's a limit to how long a young talent can wait for clarity. There's also the risk of devaluation. If Kuminga becomes demotivated, his production may drop, along with his market value. On the other hand, if he has a breakout season, his price tag could rise even higher or spark a public clash with the front office, something Golden State is desperate to avoid. There's also an emotional component that can't be overlooked. Kuminga was one of the few bright spots in the Warriors' last campaign. When the veterans faded and the team sank against the Timberwolves in the playoffs, it was a young forward who showed energy, explosiveness, and a growing offensive skill set. Overlooking that moment could turn into a difficult mistake to fix. This isn't just a contract standoff. is a reflection of a deeper transition. The Warriors, even with the names Curry, Thompson, and Green still in the building, are searching for a new identity. And in that search, every move has to be surgical. Overpaying for a player who hasn't shown consistency? That's a risk. Letting go of a young player who might become a star elsewhere? Also a risk. And in the middle of all this, Kuminga waits. He knows he has value. He knows he won't be a priority on every roster, but he also understands that his time is coming. The big question is, will it be in San Francisco or somewhere else? The offseason moves forward. Teams make their plays, but Kuminga's future remains in limbo. And maybe it's precisely that wait, uncomfortable, silent, strategic, that will define not just the fate of one player, but the next chapter of Golden State's post-dynasty era. After a decade of glory for championships and a culture built on sweat, loyalty, and mid-court three-pointers, the San Francisco team now faces a new question: how to maintain its identity without getting stuck in the past? Stephen Curry is still a genius. Klay Thompson is no longer a dub. And Draymond Green remains the emotional and sometimes explosive heart of this era. But age has come, legs have grown heavy, and the league has changed. The NBA of 2025 is more physical, more vertical, and more defensive than the NBA of 2015. The small ball that once terrified the world now sometimes feels like a worn-out play. That's exactly why the trade proposal made by Rowan Rahman from Sports Illustrated sparked a flicker of curiosity and perhaps hope for Warriors fans. In the simulation, the Warriors would receive Jonathan Isaac, Jet Howard, and Muhammad Gay. The Orlando Magic would get Gue Santos and Moses Moody. Meanwhile, the Atlanta Hawks would receive Goga Bitadze and a 2027 first-round pick. The initial reaction? Surprise. After all, Jonathan Isaac carries an injury history almost as long as his wingspan. But look closer, and you start to understand the logic behind the move. Isaac, standing at 6 feet 10 inches, 2.08 meters, combines an almost obsessive defensive mindset with rare physical ability. When healthy, he is not, and likely never will be, a reliable offensive creator. But that's exactly what makes him an interesting complementary piece on a roster that already has Curry as the offensive brain and Draymond as the chaos organizer. Rahman doesn't hold back. The Warriors built a dynasty with Draymond Green as a small ball pivot, but that strategy is dying in the modern NBA. At 35 years old, it's fair to question whether the defensive burden Green carries is wearing him down. He adds, Jonathan Isaac will be an insurance policy against that. His limited offensive game and injury history make him hard to scale on a championship team, but his defense is still elite. Elite, in fact, might be an understatement. In 2024-25, Isaac had a block percentage, BLK percent, of 4.1%, ranking him in the 100 percentile among wings. That is the very best. His steal percentage, STL percent, was 2.4%, another elite figure. And on the boards, he was one of the league's best offensive rebounders at a position, with an offensive rebound rate, ORB percent, of 10.3% and a defensive rebound rate, DRB percent, of 18.3%. These numbers sound even more impressive considering Isaac has never had a full stretch of games. Injuries kept him sidelined for much of his career. Yet when he's on the floor, he transforms his team's defense. He disrupts, anticipates, intimidates, protects. And that's where this proposal gains weight. The Warriors don't need a star. They need someone who lets Curry do what he does best, eases Draymond Green's load, and keeps the soul of the team alive even as the body starts to show signs of wear. Jet Howard and M.O. Gay, though less flashy, also add value. Howard is a shooter still seeking consistency, but has pedigree and talent. Gay is raw, but with good athleticism and room to grow. And in return, Gue Santos is promising, but still raw. Moses Moody has flash potential, but hasn't solidified a role. The emotional cost might weigh, especially with Moody, a beloved player in the franchise. But in basketball terms, the Warriors will be giving up pieces that haven't found their place for someone who despite risks, might be the key to keeping alive the style that made them legendary. Isaac's presence will allow, for example, lineups where Draymond could play as a wing or get more rest. It would also add height and rim protection without sacrificing versatility. And in a possible playoff series against the Nuggets, Wolves, or Lakers, there would be someone to physically challenge the big names down low. But of course, all of this hinges on one word: health. Isaac needs to stay healthy. And that, so far, is more hope than guarantee. On the other side, Orlando seems content to move forward. The Magic have a young, deep rotation. Paolo Banchero is the star. Franz Wagner is the cornerstone. The arrival of Moody and Gue Santos would add more youth and options without inflating the payroll. Meanwhile, the Hawks would be trading a backup center, Batads, for a first-round pick, which makes sense for a franchise possibly restarting after the potential end of the Trae Young era. In the end, it's a trade of bets. The Warriors bet Isaac could be the key to another title run before the window closes. The Magic bet on continuity and depth. And the Hawks bet on the future. But for the Warriors, the question runs deeper. Are they trying to reinvent a style that changed modern basketball, or just trying to extend the lifespan of an era that should have already ended? The truth might lie somewhere in the middle. And maybe, just maybe, Jonathan Isaac is that middle ground. An elite defender with an untapped ceiling. A high risk, but for a team used to defying conventions, maybe exactly the kind of risk needed. After all, this dynasty wasn't built on safe choices. It was built on vision, boldness, and yes, a touch of madness. And who knows, with Isaac, it might just gain one more unexpected chapter. Time will tell.